Good afternoon. I am just delighted to be here, and thank you for the kind introduction. What I'm going to do is to take the next 35 minutes or so to talk about India as a source of innovations. I think there has been a lot of discussion on India as irrelevant to global firms. Till about 20 years ago, if India fell off the map, nobody around the world would have noticed. And that was reality. And the reality was not because of prejudice, because it was based on the economic trade flows. India accounted for less than 0.56% of world trade. Therefore, if it really fell off the map, nothing would have happened. But I think that has changed in the last 15 years. Now everybody understands India is a source of low-cost, good-quality IT services. There have been books written. If you have done no reading at all, but just watch Lou Dobbs, you know that's an important issue. And even, I think, Friedman's book, The Earth is Flat, is all about talking IT, knowledge-based industries, and how the center of gravity may be shifting, maybe just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, but fundamentally an innovation in the remote delivery of software services. Everybody looks at software service delivery as a cost issue. I think it's about innovation. Because for those of you who have been involved in software, for a long time we assumed that you have to co-locate software workers in order to produce high quality. What the Indian software industry has fundamentally demonstrated is you can produce better quality by creating on-site, off-site capabilities and remote delivery. So there has been some innovation, widely documented. Increasingly, even in the automotive industry, people now start looking at India as a growth market. Last year, India went beyond the 1 million magic mark of cars sold, cars and four-wheelers. And so it's a big market in a wide variety of businesses, and we'll talk about that. But a more interesting one, which I think is in the next frontier, is how to start looking at India as a source of innovations. Is it likely to become a laboratory for the world? And why will that happen? And are there early indications that India is going to become a laboratory for the world? So I know some of you have extraordinary eyesight. If you have seen this picture before, or if you can read with 20/20 eyesight, don't read what's underneath. Just tell me, what do you see? What do you see? It's just it's not a tricky question. Elephants ambling along somewhere, is it not? And that has been going on for 2,000 years. This is elephants ambling along in northeast part of India, in the forest. So that is one reality. But a more interesting reality, which is not that easy to see when you visit India, is what they're carrying on top of the elephant. Those are electronic polling booths. Last election, 450 million Indians went to the polls. They deployed 1.5 million electronic polling booths, and the entire thing went well, without a complaint about the polling process. People did not like the outcomes, but there's a different game from thinking about the polling process. Now, I wanted to think about what the innovation here is. The innovation is not just in building a robust, secure polling system. But how do you deploy 1.5 million across a country the size and complexity of India, where in every station or every constituency, there are probably 20 people standing for election? And the sheer complexity of this is what innovation is all about. So whenever you think about India, remember there are two realities. There is the elephants walking along as if nothing has happened in 2,000 years. There is also leapfrogging of technology implementation on a massive scale that surpasses what happens in the United States. We still can't get electronic polling booths to work in California. That puts that in perspective. Right? So what I wanted to think about is the new reality. that developing countries in general and countries like India and China may leapfrog developed countries. This is just an early indication, and I'm going to give you more. Why is that so? They are not burdened with legacy systems. In fact, people constantly talk about the learning curve. I am more concerned about the forgetting curve. Because the biggest problem we have in this country is the forgetting curve. We have been socialized to think in a certain way, historically. For example, cell phones as a supplement to landlines. I still get people to say, it's not clear, let me get to your landline. Do you hear that sometimes? There's no landlines in India. There's only one thing called wireless. So in some sense, we should ask the question, should developing countries become one of the sources of innovation because they have no forgetting curve? There's only a learning curve, and they can leapfrog. Just keep that thought in mind and see what happens. So all that I want you to do for the next hour is, instead of thinking about the poor as an intractable problem and not the concern of the business, just ask yourself, what if the bottom of the pyramid, 5 billion people or 80% of humanity, did represent a market? I don't want you to assume it is a market. Just assume if it does represent a market, what are the implications? You cannot serve 5 billion people using old tools, old ways of doing things. I can see some of my faculty colleagues, we used to teach the stuff called life cycle view of foreign direct investment. Forget it. There is nothing called take the old stuff to developing countries. It's not going to work. In fact, I'm going to argue there may be a reverse flow of innovation. Not that the West will stop innovating and will be a fountainhead of innovation, but I think the place is getting more leveled, and I think you may get innovations from China and India as well coming back to the United States. So once you think of it as a market opportunity, you have no choice but to think about innovation. Just to give you some perspective, just 10 countries represent 14 to 15 trillion dollars in purchasing power parity. That's larger than UK, Germany, France, Italy, and Japan put together. So if I were a young manager, it's not US dollars, it's purchasing power parity dollars. But still, China will be the second largest economy, and India will be the fourth largest, even in dollar terms, within our lifetime, within certainly my lifetime, if not your lifetime for sure, but also in my lifetime. So the thing that I find interesting is, if I am a young person, I cannot ignore this market, which is larger than 4 countries in Europe and Japan. And more interestingly, for those of you in marketing, you have the best preconditions for success. What are the preconditions? Large size, tremendous growth, only 2 countries growing better than 6% year after year, and that's China and India. Demographics are in your favor, young populations, all ready to be buyers of everything. You can't ask for more. And certainly they're willing to accept new technologies, which I'll illustrate. So if you take all those 4 preconditions, there is no way you can lose. So the challenge for us as managers, as entrepreneurs, and as researchers is a very simple one. Easy to state, but very complex to understand. It is, how do you marry low cost, good quality, sustainability, and profitability at the same time? The bad news is we never, in our thinking, juxtapose those 4 constraints simultaneously. In fact, we tend to separate things out. Either this or that, not both and. It used to be a big debate in business schools and in the American industry on quality versus cost. What have we learned? If you deeply understand quality, you will get costs down. And if you deeply understand cost, you will focus on quality. Same thing versus differentiation and cost. We used to talk about generic strategies. What do you want, cost or differentiation? Mass customization has showed us that you can have both. What I want you to think about is, bottom of the pyramid forces you to think about 4 things at the same time. In other words, my starting premise is poor people do not need low quality stuff. They need higher quality because they are going to give you dearer dollars for them, so you better produce even better quality. That means, how do you imagine a consumer market when all that you can see at this point in time is abject poverty? That is the intellectual challenge. It is about imagination. It's not about analytics. If you use all the analytical tools we teach you, you will not see a market, and I'll show you why. So this may be as large an opportunity as the internet itself. It may be as transformative as the internet itself. But in order for us to deal with this, we have to change the way we have been socialized to think in terms of the use of technology, use of business models, scale, capital intensity, price-performance relationships, and sustainable development. It fundamentally challenges every assumption we have made in how to serve the rich societies of United States or North America, certainly Europe, Western Europe, and Japan. So much for introduction. I know most of you like to see a case study, especially a case study without numbers. Some of people think strategy means no numbers. But anyway, I will try to make it easy for you. No 40-page cases to read, but just tell you a story with pictures. Is that a deal? Okay, I'm setting the standards low, but that's all right. Let me start with the hospitality industry. Because everybody, when they think about India, they think about IT and pharma. So I want to start from somewhere totally different. You'll see that I don't want to talk about IT. If you are interested, I can talk about it, but I put it last. Adult education as a business. Automotive industry, which is not what you associate with India. Healthcare industry, not what you associate with India. And if time permits, I'll talk about how the computing-based paradigm of communications, which is what we do, it is called PC, as an instrument for doing all kinds of things, how that may be changing into a communication-oriented view of computing, which is a fundamental paradigm shift, as powerful as moving to PCs. And then we can talk about the IT industry, pharmaceuticals. But I'm going to do just the first four, and I'll do it in some detail so that you have a way of reacting during Q&A and during the next 2 days to think about how do we change our own mental models? How do we see new opportunities? So let's start with the hospitality industry. Anybody here who has a background in hospitality industry? Good. So one person will be the expert. No, this is important. I want to make sure it is grounded so that people say, but yeah, that's an interesting story, but can that really happen? So I started with some simple questions. These are very difficult questions for large companies. Can established firms innovate? Can a company with a 100-year history, can they innovate from within? Can established industries can be reinvented from within? Should it always be an outsider coming in who reinvents an industry? Can we create world-class products in developing countries? And in this case, it happens to be India. Can India move to next practices? I was telling the dean, we spend too much time benchmarking best practices. Think conceptually what happens. If everybody benchmarked everybody else, we gravitate towards mediocrity in a hurry. So I am much more focused on next practices, not best practices. And then the question for me in the hospitality industry, how do you combine world-class, world-scale, speed, low cost, and aesthetics at the same time? Aesthetics is a very important part of hospitality. So, I know some of you like to write business plans. I will give you one business plan which is just half a page. Indians travel, that's a fact. Just the Indian railways carry 50 to 20 million people every day. I have no idea where they go, but they do. Okay? And Indians have always been travelers. It's called going to pilgrimage. So historically, Indians have always traveled. Now with the trains, it is even better. And 10 million go by bus. That means there is a very predictable, non-cyclical, evolving demand for hospitality. Is that fair? I see a lot of Indian faces. Where do they all stay? See, I always get this answer with relatives. So somebody goes from Tamil Nadu to Kashi. So he has a relative there? What I want you to think about is easy answers mask the underlying opportunity. Because the answer is they stay in a totally unorganized sector called chowdhuries, bus stations, train stations. It is an extremely unorganized. Therefore, if you organize it, it's a huge opportunity. Would you like it as a brand manager? So the choices are fairly simple. Organized hospital sector is very limited in scope. There are less probably high-class rooms, well-kept rooms in India than in the city of Orlando. And here are 25 million people traveling all the time. It's as if all of Scandinavia plus some are on the move every day. But this is a huge unorganized sector. Therefore, if we can create a product that is appropriate for them, not at $300 per night, but maybe at an affordable price, which is clean, predictable, there's a huge opportunity here. And there is changing expectations. The young India have equivalent of Starbucks called Barista, MTV. They want world class at local prices. That's the interesting opportunity. So if I look at it, there's an emerging opportunity here. Large scale, India centric, world class is possible, requires reinventing. Is that a business plan? Or not? Do you need numbers to convince you? There's an opportunity here. Huh?
We have numbers, 60 to 40 million people travel every year.
What I wanted to think about is don't get confused in looking at these opportunities with DCF. This is not about DCF. This is conceptualizing something that doesn't exist. That's the beauty of this market. Now let us see what to do with it. If you start from a 5-star hotel and take things out, which is what we typically do, is it not? What do? You get a budget hotel. And there are plenty of budget hotels. But if you want to create a new category, you have to start from fresh. So we started a project called Wildfire. But first you have to define for yourself what a new category is. A new category for me is a seamless and robust bundle of functions and features that deliver unique value. It must open new competitive space. And it must set new rules and it must establish a new game. You can live with that? So, we developed a methodology for breakthrough innovation. We said, you can play in the rectangle as much as you want or in the sandbox, but you cannot violate the sandbox. In other words, I don't want a pokey room with 50 square feet. That's not a concept of a modern good hotel. So we specified how many square feet it must have. Now, obviously, I took it out for obvious reasons. We specified it must be scalable. That means in 5 years, you must be able to produce 100,000 rooms. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Quality, it must be deeply modern. And it must be at a price performance, and I'll come back and show you, that is totally affordable, not by everybody in India, but a significant portion of the traveling public. Okay? In other words, you cannot violate the sandbox. So, of course, we did benchmark to find out what people have done before we throw away all the stuff that we learned. We did a lot of video ethnography. We literally went inside unorganized sector, hotels and chowdhuries, and with the permission of the guests, we videotaped 300, 400 hours of videotapes to see how do people really use this place. Not what we thought they use, how they use, but how they really use. And the focus was clear, combine aesthetics, modernity, world class, and so on. So we went from concept to prototype in 18 months. And on the ground, now there are 1 hotel working, 10 being built, all within 24 months. And everything has to be thrown out. Human resource infrastructure from hotels, vendor infrastructure, maintenance, and certainly IT infrastructure. Everything was thrown out, and we had to invent fundamentally new ways of doing things. And you'll see why. Let me show you what the hotel looks like. Okay, that's the foyer, and that's how it is inside. It has a gym. It has an ATM machine. clean rooms, and we call it Smart Basics. Now, I like to pose the question, how much would you pay? Let me tell you what it has. It has an LCD TV in the room. It has wireless broadband connection. It has a refrigerator. It has a coffee maker. It has clean workspace. And it has obviously clean rooms, which you can see, and a nice bathroom, attached bathroom. And it is very spacious. How much would you pay?
That looks like 3,000 rupees a day.
You see how easy it is? Bangalore. In other words, you have no way of thinking about quality. That's what it tells me. When you pay $300 to $400, do you get all the facilities I talked to you about? How many hotels can you go where there is an ATM? There is a business center. There is an exercise room. What I wanted to think about is, all of you were wrong. One person said 900 is probably because he has already read about it. It's $20. And it was profitable in the first month. This is not about, hoping for profit 10 years down the road. First month it was profitable. It has been full, almost full. In fact, it is so clearly done in terms of accounting. The May data for financials and all the metrics I get on the first morning here. And I wanted to see why. Because there is a clear brand identity. You can see all the icons. They are oriented towards making it global from day one. And that's exactly what the innovation is. If I look at Marriott, from price range, about $60, $70 for Fairfield, Courtyard, Marriott, and the Ritz, we fundamentally broke the equation. Now, how many of you think this will travel to all of Asia rapidly? Huh? Is there a global opportunity here? And the interesting thing is, you don't have to come to the United States. That's not the only market in the world. Why not all of Africa? Why not all of Middle East? Why not all of Southeast Asia? Why not China? In other words, what I wanted to think about is this opportunity is big. Anyway, you can say, does this make sense from a hospitality industry perspective? You're quiet. And you didn't believe it. It could be done. Okay, so you knew about this. All right. Adult education. There are 200 million illiterate Indians. So what coexists is tremendous knowledge industry, IT, and 200 million illiterate Indians as well. The solution always has been, around the world, focus on reading. In fact, we call it 3 R's. And I still haven't understood why they are called 3 R's, because it's reading, writing, and arithmetic. But let us assume it's 3 R's. The question is, why should all 3 of them go together? So somebody said, why can't I teach people only 1 R just to read first? Because no adult who is working all the time in the village is going to come and spend 400 hours to learn 3 R's. But I can teach them 1. And that makes them already somewhat literate, and let us see what happens. The second thing is, we assume they have to teach people alphabets, words, and then reading. What happens if you teach them reading and then work them back to alphabets? It's a 180-degree turn. What I wanted to think about is a fundamental innovation in the patterns of cognition and learning. They spend a lot of time on de-skilling the teaching and the learning process. Use of embedded systems in how you teach. Moving to a personalized teaching system, because they don't have to have a teacher all the time. They can go back to the machine and they can revisit the lesson. Experimentation, and that's the reason why they're doing it in 6 languages. to sort out the universal from the idiosyncratic, and the ability to scale and at very low cost. The interesting thing is, it's not just happening with TCS. NIIT is trying to do exactly the same in teaching people programming and computer education for less than 10 cents per lesson. That means we have to fundamentally innovate on how we teach. And the several NGOs have also initiated experiments. So a major area of experimentation is teaching and learning, especially teaching adults. And I would like to raise the question, do we have the problem, big problem in this country of retraining adults? And I want you to think about, do we have to have innovations in how do we train them? How do we provide new skills? And at very low cost. Okay, now I know that's somewhat interesting, but not interesting for you. So, I know all of you like cars. You cannot be in LA without liking cars. So let's look at the auto industry. The good news about the auto industry in India is growing, but the center of gravity is at a price range of about $4,000 to $5,000. And some of you may still, coming from India, may own Mercedes-Benz, so I had to put that little tiny dot somewhere, so making sure that you don't feel left out. But the center of gravity is $4,000 to $5,000 car. Just that information, if you're a strategist in the United States auto industry, would that bother you? That somebody's producing a car for $5,000, sold, retail. What is the immediate reaction? Can't be good quality, right? Is that easy to check? I say you don't even have to go to India. Import 5 and figure out whether it's good quality or bad quality. But anyway, so I just put this and say, Indian auto industry is here at 5,000. United States is about 15 to 20,000 as the low end. If I just look at this picture, what is the first thing that should come to our mind? Forget about the quality of cars. What about the components that go into building those cars? That means somebody has figured out how to make components for a $5,000 car and they make a good profit. That means the cost must be at least 1/4 the cost of auto component producers in the United States. Because where do you want to have a tougher transmission? In US or in India? It's an obvious question, isn't it? So you start learning very rapidly that there is a 4 times advantage. Then I look at this and say, is there a need for a $3,000 car? There is a $1,000 motorbike, two-wheeler, and a $5,000 to $6,000 car. Now there is a blank in between. So I show this chart and most people say, CK, have you done any market research? What is the answer? Yes. Market research is so obvious. You think this guy needs help? So I say no need to do market research. He needs help. Okay, so what can you say? There is going to be a huge market for used cars, and there is going to be people trading up from two-wheelers because they can't carry 6 children on a two-wheeler. So the question is, what happens if it goes from 5,000 to 3,000? Then there's a 5 to 6 times advantage over the United States. Would that bother you? There's something else is happening. So I just looked at the map of India. The good news is almost all the auto industry and the components industry is emerging in 3 places. One around the Noida, Delhi area, second is in Pune, Bombay area, and the third is in Madras, Pondicherry, Bangalore area. This ecosystem evolved in spite of the government, which is the good news. So there is a lot of domain knowledge that exists in 3 places in India, not just in one place. Not just in Frankfurt, not just in Detroit, but it exists in 3 areas. And the companies have won all kinds of awards. Deming Prize, Japanese Quality Award, TQM Award. You go down to the automotive components industry, they won all the quality awards. That means they've figured out how to manufacture world class and small batch. So then you say, okay, where is the IT knowledge here? It just happens to be in the same place. The entire IT industry's ecosystem is also in the same place where the automotive industry is. Now you can ask an interesting question. What if we combine automotive domain knowledge, manufacturing quality, small batch capability, low cost, and embedded software? In fact, I believe India is going to rewrite the meaning of manufacturing quality with intelligent components. And as you know, our cars are becoming extremely intelligent. That means you need to have sensors, you need to have embedded software as an integral part of all components and subsystems. So, the question is, how do you leverage the hardware-software ecosystem to create a new concept of manufacturing? All right. You say, I don't like that. That's fine. Let's look at healthcare industry. And I'll shut up. Prosthetics for poor people in India. This is lower limb prosthetics. Evidence is a company called Jaipur Foot. The interesting thing is when you start developing specifications for prosthetics in India, you have to worry about barefoot walking. People cannot afford shoes, or even if they can afford shoes, they can't go into the kitchen with shoes, neither can they visit a temple with shoes. So you need to learn how to do barefoot walking. You just can't look like a stump with shoes on, but it must look like a foot. You must squat on the floor. People don't have furniture in the villages. Walking on uneven ground, that doesn't take research. You just walk out of Bombay airport, you know that. Paucity of doctors, that means we have to de-skill the entire process. A need for custom fitting in a day. Poor people cannot come to the clinic and come for 10 visits, which is what we do normally here. So you have to fit them once in 8 hours and send them home. And it better be as good, at least as good as US models. But if you perform across all those specifications, it has to be better than US. Is it not? The US specifications are not that stringent. You don't have to sit cross-legged. You can sit on your sofa. So I like to pose the question, it costs $12,000 for prosthetics in this country. How much should it be in India? Huh? I want you to be careful about what you say. 1,000 rupees is $20. If they can do it for $20 and we are doing it for $12,000, and you're learning how to do the $12,000 bet in the business school. In other words, if you wish for it, you will get it. And I just want to show you it's a very complex mechanism. And what I'm also saying is, because people say, how do you develop products in a country like India? I think you're going to have a lot of discussions on how to contextualize. But if you look at what I just did, I said the requirements are squatting and sitting cross-legged. That means you need medical capabilities or you need something that is related to how the body functions. But you also need business requirements, poverty, lack of trained manpower, and so on. Let us see what they do, and we can tell me whether this is high quality or not. And then we'll decide how much to pay for it. What do you folks think? How much would you pay? Huh? Actually, this does better than $12,000. But they can't afford. If anybody in India can pay $12,000, they can come to UCLA Medical Center. So, obviously they cannot. It costs $25. And one of you said 1,000, you're right. And actually, what I want you to think about is the opportunity for extraordinary innovation coming out of serving the bottom of the pyramid. That means you develop specifications for innovation fundamentally differently. You think about technical and business criteria differently, commitment to world-class quality. That is one thing I want you to emphasize here. Don't do second-class work. You must commit to world-class quality, better than world-class quality, because poor people need better than world-class quality. And that's the commitment you make. And when you make that commitment, you get breakthrough innovation. Capacity to scale, de-skilling of work, and radical innovation, because you also need a lot of humanity and humility and service in order to make these things happen. This is not the only place. I could have shown you Arvind Eye Hospital, which does 200,000 eye surgeries per year for $30, cataract surgeries, $3,000 here. I could have shown you pediatric cardiac care, especially working on children which are probably who are 1 day, 2 day old children doing arterial switch, which is the most difficult medical operation because the size of the heart for a child, 2 day old child, is as big as a grape. You operate on that for $1,500 compared to $200,000 here. And in every one of them, quality levels are much higher. And I've compared in Arvind Eye Hospital, N of 18,000 in the UK with N of 21,000 in Pondicherry and Coimbatore. So these are not small sample sizes. These are very large sample sizes. On every medical parameter, it is as good or better. So I want you to think about it. Those are the numbers. It's not surprising that the National Health Service in the UK is already starting to send people to India on what they call wellness tourism. You go there. My attitude is, this is what I tell them. If you have cataract, just go to Madurai. For the same price, you can have a good trip with your spouse or your friends, have the surgery, visit the temples, make sure your eye still works, and then come back. And I wanted to think about, we assume healthcare cannot be outsourced. I don't believe it. Most elective surgery, most surgery that can be delayed can be outsourced. And I just want you to give it some thought. So I'm not going to go through the rest of them. I just want you to think about innovative high-tech solutions, new price performance levels, not 5% less, but 5% of what it costs us here. Scale of operations and sustainable development. This is the sandbox that I think bottom of the pyramid and countries like India force you to play. And then there are 5 billion people who have similar problems, not just 800 million people in India. This could be a huge globalization wave. I call it globalization 4.0. In other words, traditionally we have assumed innovations will come from the top of the pyramid, like the United States, Europe, and Japan, to the bottom of the pyramid. I am just asking you, is there an emerging opportunity to reverse the trend as well? That is why it is so exciting for us, and especially I'm so envious that you're so young because you're going to live this world. I only document it. But you cannot do this unless you have imagination, passion, courage, deep sense of humanity and humility. Intellect helps, but I didn't put intellect on top. You must imagine a different world before you can create it. And this is about imagining a different world. And I want you to leave with this thought. Are these folks street children working on the internet? The story is they put internet possibility for these children to play, and they are from Delhi. They are essentially street children. They have no homes, no education. They cannot read in any language. In 3 months, they figured out and taught each other how to surf the net. And I want you to think about, is this the next wave of innovation? And now there are about 20 cognitive scientists and computer scientists studying on the development of language, development of thought patterns, working with these children. So what I want you to think about is an extraordinary opportunity that's available to all of us. We can do well and do good at the same time. Thank you very much.